If to the extent that we're, thinking about the institution of the presidency, it's both good that Donald Trump wasn't able to appoint Sidney Powell to be a special counsel to go start charging people with crimes as she investigated the election fraud, given what we know she thought and still does about election fraud and what she thinks counts as evidence in that regard. On the other hand, the president designated somebody to be a special counsel to look into these things, and the response of the people in the White House who were trying to contain the damage that he was doing was to pretend like he didn't say it, not do any paperwork, pretend that he hadn't named her special counsel and given her security clearance, which you're sort of rooting for and also horrified to find yourself rooting for.
There's also this also sort of amazing reputational subtext here, which is like the team normal versus the crazies, right? We keep seeing this and again, and it's like Pat Cipolloni's like, I'm a real lawyer. I'm a real person who backs up things with facts. Like, these are just like ragtag nut bars. And it's like, well, the president believed in you before he believed in them.
Yeah.
Like everyone, there's this like really funny divide of like who is on what side of this line of the coup. And
yeah.
But this moment where like, I think the scales genuinely do fall from their eyes a little bit of like, oh, these are the people he wants to hear from. This is who the president
trusts. But they're connected. And I mean, look, the whole graphic depiction of what amounts to like a bar crawl through the, West Wing to the East Wing to steal the election, like pushing Rudy out like a wedding crasher. I worked in the White House for 5.5 years. No one was ever put alone in the cabinet room unless they didn't pass their rapid background check, which is how you get into the White House, or they got drunk at a reception in the residence. I mean, I've never heard of that before. And then the chief of staff comes back because Cassidy says he wasn't there. He has to return to the 18 acres to escort him out like a delinquent. I mean, it's the most bizarre part of it. But the reason they're there is because the institutionalists were colossal failures.
Exactly.
Yes. And they never quit. And all the testimony about the 14th, none of them quit. Scalia doesn't quit. Right. McConnell doesn't quit Trump. No one goes and meets with Joe Biden, who's an incoming president. No one bestows integrity on the results of the election. None of these people do. So to hear them, and they turn, it's all relative. So to hear them arm wrestling the real villainous villains, they were the villains a half an hour earlier.
And by the way, Mark Meadows, is the guy who escorts Rudy out so that he doesn't wander back into the mansion. He's also the guy that ultimately signed with the Overstock guy.
Yeah.
Like in the end, the person, right? He sides with the
Overstock.
With the Overstock guy.
Just be clear, we're talking about a person who runs a website.
Yes.
For
accessory goods. She had to resign after he confessed to having the affair with the Russian agent.
Yes.
Maria Butina.
Right, exactly.
There's always a Russian.
That's the backstory on.
But we still need to know what turned him. I need to understand, because he, at some point, his rational mind keeps kicking in for like moments, and then he just loses it again.
Well, the adults in the room aren't actually the adults in the room.
Right.
And Liz Cheney said, this guy isn't a child. No. And yet he is treated as a child over and over again. We talk about the indulgence of these whims. The idea that, we'll let him appoint Sidney Powell as special counsel, but we won't really fill out the paperwork.
Right, yes.
It's like how I deal with a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
I'll tell him we're going to have dessert at like midnight. He'll be asleep by then, so we won't know. Right. This is the same behavior that they're performing with Trump.
But there is a little bit of precedent for this in history, right? In the Nixon era, we've got Nixon so unhinged, so unhealthy, in some cases so crippled by alcohol in the throes of Watergate, that you've got other members of the administration saying, don't follow his orders. Yeah. Or actually, this is going to go through me. Or actually, I'm in charge here, right? You get that at various times when we have thought the presidency was at its breaking point. Here we get that. We get that with Jeffrey Clark, right? We get that with this Sidney Powell thing. We just didn't do it. He told us to do it, and we just didn't follow through on it. That implies that the presidency was so broken in that moment that somebody else was effectively acting as president of the United States, as the head of the federal government. Nobody's copping to that. Nobody came publicly forward about that until today, and it had to be pried out of them by the investigation. Right. I mean, everybody who let it get this bad and who tried to manage it away in this way will have to pay for this in history forever.
Absolutely. But it does come out today in exactly the way you're describing. Cipollone nominates Mike Pence for Presidential Medal of Freedom. It does come out today. They have, not necessarily through the things they said, but the things they have not said, made abundantly clear that Donald Trump was not America's commander-in-chief on January 6th. He was neither atop the military, nor the Justice Department, nor the Department of Homeland Security.
And when you have Katrina Pearson being the voice of reason in the White House, then you've got a problem, right?
Or
Brad Parscale, and they're saying, no, it's him. He's the one doing it. And ultimately, it was just broken, and they were just incompetent. And that was the worst thing that happened. The worst thing that happened is that somebody got in touch with Stuart Rhodes and Enrique Tarrio and said, hey, here's a good idea. Keep him in power using violence.
Yes.